Ethan Hale had faced many strange situations in his short career as a diplomat, but nothing prepared him for the moment he stepped into the grand chamber of the Scifi Dominion. The chamber stretched high above him, its walls made of living crystal that shimmered with faint blue light. The floor reflected his steps like polished stone, and alien symbols glowed faintly along the edges. The air smelled faintly metallic, and the silence of the room made every sound sharper than it should have been. He walked forward carefully, his boots echoing as he approached the raised throne. On that throne sat Queen Thalera, ruler of the Scifi, a tall and commanding figure with eyes that seemed to glow like twin stars. She was surrounded by her advisors, all cloaked in silken robes that moved like water when they shifted. Ethan could feel dozens of eyes on him. Some were curious, others hostile, but all were waiting. Ethan had been told this was to be a routine meeting, a chance to discuss trade routes and security agreements after a recent rescue mission he had carried out. Weeks earlier, his small ship had pulled Scifi civilians from the wreckage of a station damaged by an asteroid storm. He had done it because it was the right thing to do, not expecting anything in return. Yet that act had brought him here, standing before the most powerful alien monarch in this sector of space. When Queen Thalera finally rose from her throne, the entire chamber fell into silence. Her voice carried with perfect clarity, every word striking like the toll of a bell. "Ethan Hale of Earth," she declared, "you stand before me not as a mere guest but as one who has shown courage beyond duty. I owe you more than thanks. I owe you a choice." Ethan's brows furrowed. He glanced around, noticing the sudden tension in the advisors. A few of them shifted uncomfortably, as if they already knew what was coming and did not approve. The Queen continued, her gaze steady and unyielding. "By the ancient laws of the Scifi, my throne cannot remain secure without a bond that proves both strength and unity. You have proven both. Therefore, I give you two paths: marry me, and stand beside me as consort and partner to our people. Or refuse, and face exile from Scifi space forever." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Advisors turned to each other, their whispers sharp and urgent. Some looked horrified, others intrigued. Ethan, however, felt his breath catch in his chest. He stared at the Queen, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "Marry you?" he asked, his voice unsteady. "Yes," she replied calmly, her eyes never leaving his. "It is not a command, but an ultimatum. Join me, or leave our space and never return." The words struck Ethan harder than any blow. His heart pounded, and his thoughts scattered in a storm. He had expected political discussion, maybe even a few stern warnings about human presence near Scifi borders. But this was something no training could have prepared him for. The advisors began murmuring louder. One of them, an elder with silver patterns along his skin, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this is madness," he hissed. "A human cannot share our throne. It defies centuries of tradition." The Queen raised a single hand, and silence returned instantly. "Tradition bends to survival," she said firmly. "Ethan Hale saved Scifi lives when others would have let them die. Courage is not bound to species. He has proven worthy." Ethan felt dozens of eyes press on him again, like weight upon his shoulders. He could not tell whether they wished for him to accept or to reject. His mind raced through possibilities. If he said yes, what would Earth think? If he said no, what would it mean for human-Scifi relations? The chamber seemed to close in around him. He remembered the frightened faces of the Scifi civilians he had rescued. He remembered how fragile the balance of peace was in this region. And now, he was being asked, or rather, pushed into a decision that could change everything. Still, he could not give an answer. Not yet. He stood silent, his breath uneven, as the Queen's words continued to echo in his mind. Marry me, or face exile. The chamber remained frozen in anticipation, waiting for his response. But Ethan Hale, a human far from home, had never felt so unprepared in his life. Ethan Hale hardly slept that night. The Queen's words still rang in his mind. He had faced many tense situations as a diplomat, but never one that felt so personal, so impossible. He lay awake in the guest chamber provided by the Scifi palace, staring at the ceiling made of glowing crystal veins. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Queen Thalara's face and heard her calm yet unshakable voice offering him the most impossible choice of his life. Morning came quickly. A pair of Scifi attendants escorted him to a smaller council hall, where Queen Thalara waited, along with a few advisors. The air was heavy with expectation. Ethan stood tall, though inside he felt like he was being pulled in opposite directions. The Queen regarded him with a steady gaze. "You must wonder why I offered such a choice," she said. "It was not a whim, nor a game of power. It was necessity." Ethan folded his arms, trying to keep his tone calm. "I do wonder. You could have simply thanked me. You could have given me a medal, or a trade agreement. But marriage?" He shook his head slowly. "That is not the kind of proposal a diplomat expects." The Queen's expression softened, though her posture remained regal. "Our traditions are older than your species' recorded history. For countless generations, the ruler of the Scifi has been bound to a partner chosen by deed, not by birth. Strength, courage, and wisdom must be proven, or the throne itself loses its claim to the people. Without such a bond, the empire fractures." Ethan blinked. "And you think I fit that?" "You saved Scifi lives when disaster struck," she said. "Your ship was small, your resources few, yet you risked all to protect strangers. Many in this court would have looked away, valuing only their own power. You did not. That is why I chose you." The advisors stirred uneasily. One of them, the elder who had objected the day before, stepped forward again. His voice was sharp, filled with disapproval. "Your Majesty, he is still human. One act of courage does not make him worthy of our traditions. If you bend the law for him, you risk the loyalty of every noble house." Thalara's gaze hardened. "The law has not been bent. The law speaks only of courage, wisdom, and compassion. Ethan Hale has shown these things. The noble's pride is not stronger than the survival of the empire." Ethan listened, still stunned. He had never expected his actions to carry such weight. He had simply acted out of instinct, out of the simple belief that lives were worth saving, no matter the species. Now that same belief had brought him to the heart of a political storm he did not fully understand. He cleared his throat. "With respect, Your Majesty, you're asking me to give up everything I know. My people, my home, my life. To marry you is not just a personal choice, it's a choice for all humanity as well. Do you understand the weight of what you're asking?" For the first time, Thalara's expression showed something like weariness. She lowered her eyes for a moment before answering. "I understand more than you think. I did not wish to place this burden on you, but the Scifi throne cannot remain whole without this bond. My empire is already divided. Some wish for peace, others crave war. If I cannot prove that unity is possible, then we will fall into conflict that could consume us all. Your presence, your decision has become the symbol of whether unity can exist between different worlds." Ethan felt the chamber grow colder. He could see it now, the reason behind the ultimatum. It was not about her desire alone, but about the survival of her people. If he refused, he would not just face exile. His refusal could be used as proof that humans and Sarati could never stand together. It could push the nobles toward war. The queen stood and walked closer to him, her voice quieter but no less firm. I am not asking for your love, not yet. I am asking for your courage. Stand with me, and show the Sarati people that survival lies in unity, not in division. Ethan's chest tightened. He could not answer yet, but he knew he had no easy way out. Around him, the advisors exchanged sharp whispers. He had become more than a diplomat. He had become a symbol, a test for the fate of two civilizations. And though he wished it were otherwise, the choice before him was real. Ethan Hale sat alone in the palace garden, trying to steady his thoughts. The garden was unlike anything on earth. Trees with silver leaves whispered in the soft breeze, and glowing flowers bloomed in perfect circles across the ground. A thin stream ran between them, its water shimmering like liquid glass. The beauty around him should have brought peace, but his mind was a battlefield. He thought about his duty as a diplomat. He had been sent here to build bridges, not to become part of one. His mission had been simple: negotiate safe travel routes and secure cooperation for future trade. But now, because of one act of rescue, he was being asked to decide the fate of two civilizations. The Queen's words echoed again in his head. Stand with me, and show my people that survival lies in unity. He rubbed his temples, trying to fight the pressure building inside him. Marriage was not a matter of politics alone. It meant stepping into Sarati culture, becoming tied forever to people who were not his own. It meant losing the life he knew back on Earth, maybe forever. Yet another voice inside him reminded him of the rescued Sarati civilians. He still remembered their fearful faces as he pulled them aboard his ship. He had not thought of them as aliens in that moment, only as lives in danger. If his choice now could prevent greater suffering, did he not have a responsibility to consider it? While he sat lost in thought, footsteps approached. A Sarati guard bowed lightly before speaking. The Queen asks for your presence. Ethan followed him through the twisting halls of the palace until he was brought to a private chamber. The Queen stood by a wide window, the stars of her empire shining brightly beyond. She turned when he entered. You look troubled, she said softly. Troubled is one way to put it, Ethan answered, trying to keep his voice calm. You've asked me to make a choice that could change the future of both our peoples. I don't know if I can carry that weight. Thalera studied him with patient eyes. The weight is already upon you. You cannot set it aside. Whether you accept or refuse, your decision will shape what comes next. Her words were true, and they made his chest tighten further. He paced slowly across the room. If I say yes, Earth will see me as abandoning them. If I say no, the Sarati nobles will use it as proof that peace is impossible. Either way, I lose something important. The Queen stepped closer, her tone steady. You do not stand alone. If you choose yes, you gain not only me but the strength of my empire. If you choose no, you still return with honor, though our paths may divide. The choice is yours, Ethan Hale. But you must know your courage is what has brought us here, and courage must guide your answer. Before Ethan could reply, the chamber doors opened. The elder noble who had opposed the Queen entered, his expression sharp. Forgive me, Majesty, but this cannot wait. Thalera narrowed her eyes. Speak, Lord Kareth. The noble bowed slightly, though his voice carried open defiance. The council grows restless. Many say that if the human is allowed to claim the throne beside you, it will be the end of Sirati pride. They speak of rebellion. Ethan froze. He had expected resistance, but not open threats of rebellion. The Queen's voice remained firm. Those who speak of rebellion forget that without unity, our empire will collapse. If they wish to test their strength, they will find mine greater. Karetha's eyes flicked to Ethan. Or perhaps they will find the human weaker. He is no Sirati. He is no warrior. What right does he have to stand at our Queen's side? Ethan felt the challenge sting, though he stayed silent. He could see what Kareth was doing, undermining him, hoping to push the Queen into doubt. Thalera raised her chin. His right comes not from birth but from action. He saved our people. When danger came, he stood where others ran. That is more than many nobles can claim. Kareth frowned but stepped back, his bow stiff. As you say, Majesty. But do not expect the council to accept this easily. With that, he left the chamber. Ethan exhaled slowly. It seems my choice is not only about you and me. It is about the whole empire. The Queen's eyes softened. Yes. And that is why your choice matters so greatly. You must decide not only for yourself, but for what kind of future you believe is possible. Ethan turned to the window, staring out at the endless stars. His heart was heavy, yet somewhere inside, a small spark of resolve began to grow. He was not ready to decide yet, but he knew the time was coming soon. The morning sun rose over the crystal towers of the Sirati Palace, casting long beams of light across the throne chamber. Ethan Hale stood at the center, surrounded by nobles, guards, and advisors. The Queen sat on her throne, her expression calm but unreadable. The tension in the room was sharp, as if the very air carried the weight of what was about to happen. Queen Thalera rose slowly. Her robes shimmered as she spoke. Ethan Hale of Earth, you question whether you belong at my side. You fear this decision is too great for you alone. Very well. According to the oldest Sirati traditions, one must prove their worth through 3 trials. If you pass, no noble can deny your place here. If you fail, your choice will matter no longer. Whispers ran through the chamber. Some nobles looked pleased, hoping for his failure. Others leaned forward, curious to see how a human would face challenges meant for Sirati heirs. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he gave a small nod. Then let the trials begin. The Queen gestured to a wide stone door at the far side of the hall. The first trial is courage. Face what others fear, and return alive. The door rumbled open, and Ethan was led into a large arena below the palace. The ground was covered in sand, and high walls circled the space. Above, the nobles gathered to watch, their eyes sharp. At the far end of the arena, a gate lifted, and a beast emerged. It was taller than 2 men, its skin covered in thick plates of dark hide. 6 glowing eyes fixed on him as it roared, shaking the ground. Ethan's pulse raced. He had no weapons, only a short staff handed to him by the guards. The beast charged, its claws tearing the sand. Ethan forced himself to stay calm. He dodged left, barely escaping its strike, then struck its side with the staff. The blow barely made it stumble. The nobles laughed quietly, expecting his end. But Ethan did not quit. He studied its movements, noticing that its armor was weaker near the joints. The next time it lunged, he rolled beneath its legs and struck hard at the softer part behind its knee. The beast stumbled, roaring in pain. Again and again it attacked, but Ethan refused to give up. Using quick steps and sharp strikes, he wore the beast down until finally, with a final blow to its joint, the monster collapsed to the ground. Breathing heavily, Ethan stood tall as the arena filled with shocked silence. Above, Queen Thalera raised her hand. The trial of courage is complete. The human has faced fear and endured. The crowd erupted in mixed voices, some angry, others impressed. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow, his chest burning with pride and exhaustion. He was given little rest before the second trial began. This one took place in the Hall of Echoes, a vast chamber filled with glowing stones carved with ancient Scifi markings. The Queen explained, "This is the trial of wisdom. Solve the riddle of the stones, or be trapped within." Ethan walked among the stones, reading the strange symbols. At first, they seemed meaningless. But then he noticed patterns, shapes repeating in cycles, stars arranged in a familiar way. He remembered the constellations he had studied during his travels. Step by step, he aligned the stones according to the order of the stars. The chamber shook, and beams of light crossed the hall, forming a path forward. The Scifi nobles watched with disbelief. A human, using his knowledge of the stars, had solved a puzzle that had tested Scifi minds for centuries. At the end of the path, a crystal door opened, and Ethan emerged. The Queen nodded with approval. The trial of wisdom is complete. Now only one test remained. The Queen spoke with solemn weight. The final trial is compassion. How you treat others will prove your true strength. Ethan was led to a small courtyard, where several Scifi stood in chains. To his shock, they were nobles who had spoken openly against him. One of the guards handed him a ceremonial blade. "Show no mercy," one noble spat bitterly. "That is our way." Ethan looked at them, then at the blade. His hands tightened around the weapon, but his heart resisted. Slowly, he lowered the blade and turned to the Queen. "I will not harm them," he said firmly. "Compassion is not weakness. If unity is what you seek, it cannot be built on fear." The Queen's eyes softened. She raised her hand, and the prisoners were released. The crowd erupted again, divided between anger and respect. Thalera's voice rang clear. "The trial of compassion is complete. Ethan Hale has passed all 3 trials." Ethan stood, weary but unbroken. For the first time, he felt the nobles' eyes on him, not only with doubt but with grudging respect. He had proven something no words could. The days following the trials were filled with whispers across the Scifi palace. Ethan Hale's victories had spread quickly, and the empire buzzed with divided opinions. Some nobles admitted, though reluctantly, that the human had shown true courage, wisdom, and compassion. Others still muttered that his success meant nothing, that he did not belong among them. But whatever their feelings, none could deny that he had passed the trials with honor. Ethan himself felt both pride and exhaustion. The trials had tested not only his strength but also his spirit. At night, he still heard the roar of the beast in his dreams and saw the shifting stones of the riddle. Yet, more than the challenges themselves, what stayed in his mind was the Queen's steady gaze during each test. She had watched him not with doubt, but with an almost quiet trust, as if she believed in him more than he believed in himself. One evening, the Queen invited him to walk through the palace gardens. The silver-leaved trees glowed softly in the starlight, and the streams reflected the sky like mirrors. The two walked in silence at first, the air filled with the hum of unseen insects. Finally, Thalera spoke. "You surprised them all," she said. "Many expected you to fail. Some even wished for it. But you endured. Ethan gave a small smile. Endured, yes. But I'm not blind. I saw how they looked at me. Even if I passed, many still do not want me here. The queen paused, her eyes drifting to the glowing flowers. That is true. Change has never come easily to the Scifi. For centuries, they have looked inward, valuing their pride above all else. To them, choosing a human as consort is an insult to their traditions. But traditions can either guide us or chain us. I will not allow them to chain my people into endless division. Ethan studied her face. She spoke with strength, but beneath her words he sensed a deep burden. You carry more than most rulers I've ever met, he said quietly. I can see it in your eyes. You're fighting for unity, but you're standing alone against your own court. Thalera looked at him for a long moment. For once, her regal mask seemed to fade. You are right. Leadership is a crown of iron, not of gold. Every day, I must prove to my people that I am worthy. And every day, I wonder if I will succeed. Ethan nodded slowly. On Earth, we say that true strength is not the absence of doubt, but the ability to keep moving even when doubt is heavy. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Perhaps that is why I chose you. They walked farther until they reached a stone bridge arching over the glowing stream. The water below shimmered like liquid stars. Thalera leaned against the railing. Tell me, Ethan. Do you regret saving my people that day? Ethan shook his head firmly. Never. In that moment, they weren't Scifi or alien. They were lives in danger. I did what I had to do. Her eyes softened. And that is why you are different. Many of my own nobles would have weighed the cost before acting. You simply acted because it was right. Before Ethan could answer, shadows moved in the distance. He tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for the staff he no longer carried. The queen noticed as well. From behind the trees, a pair of figures slipped into view. Scifi guards, but not in royal colors. Their cloaks bore the dark insignia of one of the noble houses. The intruders froze when they saw Ethan and the queen. For a tense moment, silence hung in the air. Then, without a word, they vanished back into the shadows. Ethan frowned. Assassins. Thalera's expression was grim. Not yet. Spies, perhaps. But soon, they may become more. Ethan felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. So it's true. Some of your nobles will do anything to stop this union. Yes, Thalera admitted. They fear losing their grip on power. They would rather see the empire divided than accept a new path. And now, because you stand at my side, their anger burns hotter. Ethan looked out at the glowing water, his voice steady. Then it seems I've already become a target. If that's the case, I'll have to stand taller, not smaller. The queen turned toward him, her gaze steady and strong. And you will not stand alone. Remember that. For the first time since arriving in the palace, Ethan felt a strange calm. He had come here as an outsider, uncertain and unwilling. But now, walking beside Thalera under the starlight, he began to see her not just as a ruler who had placed an impossible choice upon him, but as a person carrying the weight of an entire empire. Respect had begun to grow between them, and with it, something deeper, a fragile but undeniable bond. The palace was unusually quiet that night. Ethan Hale walked along the wide halls, guided only by the pale glow of the crystal walls. The silence felt heavy, almost unnatural, as if the palace itself was holding its breath. He had grown used to whispers following him everywhere, but tonight the halls were empty. Too empty. He reached the chamber assigned to him, yet something felt wrong. The doors were ajar, though he remembered closing them before leaving for the evening meal. His instincts flared. Slowly, he pushed the door open, stepping inside with caution. The room was dark. No glow from the walls, no sound of the stream that usually hummed faintly beneath the palace floors. He moved forward, senses sharp, and that was when a shadow lunged from the corner. Ethan barely dodged the strike. A blade flashed past his shoulder, missing by inches. He stumbled back, grabbing a broken piece of furniture to defend himself. Another figure slipped from the shadows, blocking the door. "Human," one of them hissed. "You should have left when you had the chance." Ethan's heart pounded. He could see their cloaks dark, marked with the insignia of Lord Caretha's house. The rebels had made their move. The first attacker charged again. Ethan swung the broken wood hard, striking the figure's arm and knocking the blade aside. But the second came from behind, forcing him to roll across the floor to avoid being trapped. He was unarmed, outnumbered, and inside a chamber with no escape. Before he could react further, the door burst open. Scifi royal guards stormed inside, their armor glowing faintly as they raised their spears. The attackers turned to flee, but the guards were quicker. One was seized, the other cut down before he could escape. The queen herself entered behind them, her presence commanding even in the chaos. Her eyes burned with fury as she looked at the captured rebel. "Who sent you?" The prisoner spat on the floor, defiance plain. "We serve no queen who would share her throne with a human." Thalara's gaze hardened. "Then you serve treachery." The guards dragged the prisoner away, leaving Ethan standing in the wrecked chamber. His breath was heavy, his body tense. He turned to the queen, his voice low. "They were ready to kill me. This was no warning. This was the start." Thalara nodded grimly. "The nobles no longer hide their hatred. Careth leads them, though he cloaks it in false respect. Tonight was only the beginning. They will not stop until one of us falls." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then we cannot let them win." The queen studied him for a moment. "You are not Scifi, yet you stand firm even now. Tell me, Ethan, why do you not flee? No one would blame you if you left." He looked at her with steady eyes. "Because running means letting them decide the future. I won't let fear write the story for either of us." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy but filled with meaning. Thalara gave a slow nod. "Then we stand together." The following day, the council chamber was filled with tension. The nobles sat in their jeweled seats, their faces masks of control, but Ethan could feel the hostility in their eyes. At the head, Thalara addressed them with authority. "An attempt was made against the human," she announced. "A crime of treason within these walls. Let it be known that any who raise their hand against him raise it against me." The nobles shifted, murmuring. Lord Careth stood, his voice sharp. "Majesty, perhaps this proves my point. The human's presence invites danger. If he were not here, the empire would not bleed from within." Ethan stepped forward before the queen could reply. His voice rang clear. "Do not blame me for the hatred in your hearts. Last night, your blade sought me, but I still stand. I will not bow to fear, and neither should your people." The chamber fell into silence. Some nobles sneered, but others looked thoughtful, even impressed. Thalara rose, her voice like thunder. "He has spoken. Courage is not bound to blood. It is bound to choice. And he has chosen to stand." The council ended in unrest, but Ethan could sense a shift. Not all were against him anymore. Some had begun to respect what they could not deny: his strength in the face of betrayal. That night, as he walked the garden again, Ethan knew the battle was far from over. The rebels would strike harder, and the danger would only grow. But deep inside, he also knew something else. He was no longer just a diplomat lost in alien politics. He was part of something greater, and he would not step back. The throne chamber glowed in soft light as Ethan Hale stood before Queen Thalera. The council had been dismissed, and for the first time, the chamber was silent, without the tension of debate or the whispers of nobles. Only the two of them remained, with the weight of history pressing in from every corner of the room. Ethan's heart beat steadily, though his mind raced. Weeks of trials, of whispers, of near-death encounters, had led to this moment. He had seen the courage of the Scifi, their devotion to tradition, and the stubbornness that both strengthened and divided them. He had faced fear, solved riddles that tested centuries of knowledge, and shown mercy to those who wished him harm. All of it had led to this choice: marriage or exile. He glanced at Thalera. She was poised, regal, yet there was a softness in her eyes that only he had glimpsed during quiet moments in the gardens. The burden of leadership rested on her shoulders, but she had never wavered in guiding him toward the truth of the empire. "You have stood through trials," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "You have faced danger, solved mysteries, and shown compassion. The choice is yours. You may leave this place and return to Earth, free of obligation, or you may stay and stand beside me." Ethan took a deep breath. He thought of his home, of the people he loved, and of the life he might never see again if he stayed. Yet he also thought of the Scifi, of the civilians he had saved, and of the possibility of building a bond between two civilizations that had long feared each other. He remembered the last words of the nobles' leader, the threats that had come in the shadows. Choosing exile would be safe, comfortable even. But it would leave the Scifi divided and allow hatred to fester unchecked. Courage had brought him here, wisdom had guided him through the puzzles, and compassion had shown him the value of unity. Now, he had to act. Ethan straightened, lifting his chin to meet Thalera's gaze. "Your Majesty," he began, voice steady, "I have thought long and hard. I will not choose exile. I will stand beside you, not because I am forced, not because it is expected, but because I believe in what we can build together." A silence filled the chamber, so complete that even the smallest sound of their breathing seemed loud. Then, slowly, Thalera's lips curved into a small, approving smile. "You have chosen wisely," she said. "Not for fear, not for reward, but for the future. That is the spirit that binds not just one people, but two." Ethan felt a mixture of relief and resolve. He had made the choice, and now he would see it through. The queen moved gracefully to a raised platform and held out a ceremonial crown. It was not gold or silver as humans would expect, but a crystal band that shimmered with the colors of the Scifi home world. "This crown symbolizes more than rulership," she said. "It is a promise of unity, courage, and responsibility. If you accept it, you accept not only me but the hope of an entire empire." Ethan knelt and took the crown. When Thalera placed it on his head, a quiet warmth filled him, as if the light of the Scifi world itself acknowledged his decision. Around him, the chamber seemed to breathe with life. Though the council had left, the walls carried the weight of history and the promise of change. Ethan felt the responsibility settle comfortably on his shoulders. This was not the end of trials, but it was the beginning of something greater, a chance to shape a future where humans and Scifi could stand together. "Rise, consort," Thalera said, her eyes shining with pride and determination. Together, we will guide this empire to a new era. Ethan rose, looking around the chamber. He saw not just a palace, but the symbol of possibility. He had come as a human, uncertain and hesitant, and now he stood as a bridge between two worlds. The choice had been difficult, but it had been the right one. Outside the palace, the stars of the Scifi Dominion glimmered brilliantly. Ethan knew that challenges would come, that some would resist, and that the path ahead would not be easy. Yet he also knew that courage, wisdom, and compassion, the same qualities that had carried him through the trials, would guide him forward. He turned to the Queen, a quiet determination in his gaze. "Then let us begin," he said. Thalera nodded, and together, they stepped toward the future. Humanity and the Scifi would face obstacles, but they would face them united. And in that unity, there was hope, a hope that one human's courage could change the destiny of an empire. The palace glowed beneath the twin moons, and for the first time in many long nights, Ethan felt at home in a world far from Earth.